Live from America's heartland, this is the Daily Truth Report with your host, Noah Christopher.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. On the screen is a new time guest. Really excited to welcome this guy onto the show. It's author Chad Stewart. Chad, welcome to Daily Truth Report.
Thank you, Noah. Glad to be on. It's exciting.
Yeah, well, so I'm really excited to have you on. You're kind of new to me. I found out about you a couple weeks ago, and I was really blown away the more I dug in, all the things you've done, and you've created this incredible universe within a book series, and you're doing big things. I think I'm guessing a lot of people this might be the first time they're getting to meet you. But I'm also guessing that pretty soon they're probably going to know the name Chad Stewart and your book series. So I'd love to just jump in and have you tell us and maybe with the idea of people that don't know you as well. Who are you? What do you do? What is Britfield? Just start at the beginning and tell me a little bit about your world.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll just do a quick overview. It's always a good start, and then we can pull threads from any of it. But originally from Newport Beach, California. I was back east, Wellesley, Massachusetts, for about 16 years. Did my undergraduate in British literature, European history. Actually, it was pre-law. Thank goodness I didn't go down that road. And went on to grad school and then graduate school, and then eventually got into investment banking, worked for 3 Fortune 100 companies. And it was about 12 years ago. I was sent down to this boring seminar, Providence, Rhode Island. I think it was insurance. Boringer than heck, and started to drift and started to doodle. And I doodled a simple circle, 3 lines, a basket, a boy and a girl, and I wrote the boy and the balloon. And that idea resonated with me, and I just started to see this whole story come to life. And I went home that weekend and literally on one piece of paper just started to outline this story. And I lived off and on in England for about 2 years. And so I just starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England, current time, which is really important. We'll talk about that. And it's at this horrible orphanage, Weatherly Orphanage. And it's about Tom, 12-year-old orphan, been an orphan his whole life, been at Weatherly for 6 years. And this is the year he's going to escape. And that's within the first couple of pages, which I think is cool because it kicks it off right away that it's not a story about an orphanage. It's about getting out of the orphanage. And he's not going anywhere but his best friend, Sarah. Somewhere along the lines, they commandeer a hot air balloon and start traveling all over England, Oxford, Windsor, London, finally down to Canterbury. But they're chased by the illustrious detective Gower Stone, who's renowned for capturing escaped orphans and runaway children. And so I sat down, took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to complete book 1. And then from concept, doodle, to launching, it took over 10 years. Just like anything in reality, anything of quality and value takes a great deal of time. And I say that because we live in this flash over substance society, and it's just like you see all these successes and overnight successes, and it's all nonsense. It's all fabricated. And most of the people out there, these billionaires, they're just actors. They didn't build anything, and they can't misspell their name or tie the shoelace, frankly. And so 10 years of hard work, dedication, commitment. We did a ton of research in the industry. In 4 particular areas too: literature, education, media, and films. And then eventually launched August 2019. And since then, it's become a national bestseller. It's in the top 3% of any book released within the same time frame. And it's one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. And at the time, it was just going to be book 1, Britfield Lost Crown. And now it's a 7-book series. And then we launched book 2, Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, takes place in France. And it's 474 pages. And then we launched in September 2022, Britfield and the Return of the Prince, takes place in Italy. And that's 575 pages. And then we're just about ready to launch book 4, Britfield and the Eastern Empire. Starts in Austria and ends in Russia. And that's 460 pages. And then book 5 will eventually be in Asia, starting in South Korea. And then book 6 will be in South America. And then book 7 will be in the United States. And in every book, the main characters, Tom and Sarah, grow by 1 year. So in book 1, they're 12, book 2, they're 13, book 3, they're 14. Which I think is very important because especially at that age, it's like a decade, right? Going from 12 to 13 is like a decade, 13 to 14 is a decade. And it's a lot of fun as an author too, because you can do more things and they're a little more mature and they can take more risks and etc. But I'm very, very attuned to that age. You know, there's things when they're 14 that, you know, they wouldn't be doing when they're 12 years old and etc. and stuff. So, and what's so great about this series, and I think why it's having such huge impact, not just nationally, but globally, it is a timeless classic. It is designed as a global series, as number one takes place in current time. And so we're living in this sort of fantasy world where like 80-90% of the books out there, literature out there, are sort of all post-apocalyptic, or they're about witchcraft or demigods or superheroes or vampires, or some kind of, if you will, dark dystopia. And those are designed to do two things. Number one, disconnect kids from reality. And number two, make them feel less than they are. Right? If I just had superpowers, if I just had a magic wand, if I just had a magic cloak, I think every child is amazing. I think every child is born in the image of God, born with creativity, born with a gift, born with a purpose and a reason to be here, and a wonderful talent. And I think every child is amazing. And if we have time, we can talk about, some of the bunk science out there.
I told you guys you're gonna like this guy. This is why I was so excited to talk with you, Chad, because what you're saying there is amazing. I love that. I grew up. I used to love reading as a kid.
Yes.
But I kind of missed the Harry Potter generation. I guess luckily I never really got into that. It came after, really. That was my time.
Sure.
But now if you send your kids, that's the first thing they're going out reading. And I'm not real excited about that. I'm not excited about them reading about witches and magic spells and all this stuff. So when I heard about this universe you've created, it has a very, I'm sure you've heard this many times before, but you've got a C.S. Lewis, Tolkien kind of vibe to what you're doing. I see the book cover behind you. I don't know if the C.R. Stewart is a nod to C.S. Lewis, but
a little shout out. Yeah.
Yes, I definitely noticed that. But you've got that style where the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's kids. And sure, there was a little bit they went into the wardrobe, and maybe there was some magical stuff in C.S. Lewis, but they were real people, and it had a tremendous message. And so I love what you're doing. It's real. People can connect with it. It doesn't have to be the X-Men universe. We don't all have to be superheroes. And by the way, that's just designed to promote this hybrid type stuff anyway, that is really awful. So anyway, I just I'm gonna let you get back to telling the story, but I just love the idea that I could maybe the whole family could be reading this book together and enjoy it. So the kids in the book start out at age 12, they grow up year by year, book by book.
Every book is go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna. What's the probably any age can read this, but what's kind of your target demographic for this book? What's the ideal age for maybe a kid getting into this book?
Sure, and real quick, just to finish out what I was saying, like about the series is to take place at current time is children are reading as adults are reading it. They're learning about geography, art, architecture, history, and culture. It's based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, hope, and faith. And it has the 4 C's in every book: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. This is all packed in every single fast-paced adventure series. In book 1, Tom and Sarah are 12. And so book 1 has always been sort of that beachhead of middle school. If that makes sense, that sort of 11 to 13. We've had readers as young as 7, and our oldest reader to date is 93. 55% of our reading audience for Britfield Series are adults, and I get feedback all the time. In fact, just 2 days ago, I got a letter from this 63-year-old woman that loves the series, and she hates the computer, and so she sends me a check to buy book 3 and pre-order book 4. And I just thought that was so cool. So it's and then in book 2, it's a continuation of the same sort of story, if you will. And like in book 2, it's like 6 months later, and then in book 3, it's a year later. And I'm always coming up with a type of, if you will, device on something that's happened over that particular time frame. And so really, it's a great middle school young adult series. But with that said, adults love it. And what's interesting about Lewis, and I'm a big Lewis fan, obviously, is that he created the world of Narnia for adults. He loved fantasy himself. He loved all those sort of child novels. And so he was really wanting to try to create something that adults would love reading. And it just so happens that it became, one of the most popular children's series. But I do think what's interesting about ours is we don't use any of those devices. We don't have any magic. We don't have any witchcraft. We don't have any demigods, superheroes. We have none of it. These books are as authentic as can be, based in reality, based in real places, locations, maps, time frames, how cold it is in Vienna in spring. I mean, how long it takes up from a train ride, to here to there, how much it costs per pounds. And they're not drawn out in details. I just do my research, incredibly well. And when I'm writing, I'm literally researching every single day when I'm writing. And pulling up images and looking at stuff. And so they're very, very accurate, fast paced. And I think that's really important because it connects children, it connects the readers to real places, real time, and real events. And what's nice, and you'll appreciate too, is stuff we do thread through current events. In book 2, which I've always looked at as sort of my Empire Strikes Back, Thomas Era 13, and obviously it's getting a little more intense. The curtain's pulled. We get into sort of puppet masters that are behind the scenes. This group called the Committee, which is based on the Committee of 300, and they're the ones that are sort of pulling strings in world events. And we touch on secret societies and other stuff. Now that's not the main theme of the book, but it's a thread that runs through it because it matches with this whole idea of Britfield being a real royal, the actual real royal bloodline to the British throne. And they were been usurped for over 800 years by the Tudors, by the Stewarts, and then finally by the Windsors. And they were thought to not exist anymore. And all of a sudden something happens. I don't want to give anything away. So it's really kind of cool. We've got this royal mystery. We've got this Britfield dynasty, if you will. We've got Tom, who's been an orphan his whole life. And in book 1, he finds out that his parents might still be alive. I'll leave that there. And just this drive of courage and hope and children, they're just thinking for themselves and confronting a lot of problems and a lot of issues and overcoming those by their own means or by the help of others and stuff. And again, too, like adults are always put in a great light. A lot of the things today are beating up adults and making them look like buffoons. Mm-hmm. Not our adults. All our characters all have qualities, and those qualities are emphasized. And it's just really a warm-hearted, fast-paced adventure series. I got some feedback from a 40-year-old woman about 3 weeks ago. Said, I absolutely love the Britfield series. She goes, it's my favorite series. She goes, it reminds me a lot of James Bond, but with a larger cast of characters and a bigger purpose. And I thought, wow, she just summarized that beautifully. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of a quick overview. Yeah.
Well, so Chad, investment bankers are not usually their creativity. All of a sudden you start doodling, and then that turns into a book, and then it turns into a series and a universe and a movie line coming out we'll talk about. You've obviously always had this in you. Did you expect at some point you'd have this major pivot in life where you go off and write a book, or it just happened? Is it divine inspiration? How'd you get here?
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. It found me. I didn't find it. And if you told me, 12 years ago, you're going to spend the next quarter of a century of your life on this book series, I'd laugh at you. I'd say, because I never had a desire to write books. I think everybody has a novel inside them, and I think a lot of people want to write a book, and I think that's cool. If I were to write something, it never would have been a fictional novel, probably been a nonfiction. But I was brought up in a very creative background. I was very blessed to have a very great elementary school in Cronomar, which is unfortunately no longer there. It's now multi-million-dollar homes. but I just had really good teachers, and it was in 6th grade. And especially at that age, 11 to 12, it is such a pivoting point for children, especially boys. And they're still grasping, if you will, that creative thing. And then then you get into middle school, and they're 13 and 14, and it just gets darker. But I had a wonderful 6th grade teacher, and we had a very creative class. And I'm saying all of this to give just not my background, but the importance of education, the importance of youth, and having an environment where kids can think and try things and be creative. And honestly, it was we had a writing assignment, and it was worth about a third of our grade, and we had to write a book in 6th grade, and I think it was like 25 pages, and it was before computers, so it was like you have to write it out, and you could do a paragraph and a picture, but again, that's a daunting task for a child. And that's when I learned one of the many secrets, if you will, to writing. And you write about what you know, and you write about what you love. And so my first official book of 25 pages was James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. And I was a Secret Service agent, 12 years old, working for the British government, living in Hampshire in a beautiful Tudor-style mansion with a red Ferrari. and I was and I had a butler, James, I think it was. And I was tasked with capturing this villain that was terrorizing Europe. And literally, and I just had so much fun with it, and it's got dry humor in it. And I even criticized Kmart back then, and which was really kind of funny. And it was fun. And so, I did it, and I wrote about something I loved, and I wrote about something I enjoyed, and some experience. And I loved the James Bond movies. And so I think that was one of those seeds that was planted. I didn't come out of it saying I'm going to be a novelist, I want to be a writer. But see, children will never know what they can do until you give them an opportunity to do it, right? And that's coming back to the bunk science about genetics. 99% of genetics is completely bunk. Oh, your kid was born like this, or he's not smart. All lies, all just lies. It comes down to two key things. One is environment, and the second is opportunity. And if a child has a safe environment, if you will, a creative environment where it's not, no, you can't do that, and don't do that, and don't go out there. You know what I mean? But you give them that kind of freedom, that safety, and then you give them opportunities. And it's simple, and it's not throwing money at it. But if like there's a musical instrument, I've said this before, you don't have to go out and buy it, rent it. And if they get burned out with the trumpet after 3 weeks, fine. Go on to the next thing, and let kids experience as much as they can, because you never know what's going to happen, what's going to hit. It could be walking with them, once a month on the tide pools along, the ocean front, or, by a lake, and suddenly, 10 years from now, they're into, marine biology. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a great book out there, and I don't know if it's in print anymore. It's called Coloring Outside the Lines by Roger Schenck. He was out of Northwestern, and I just loved the title. Coloring Outside the Lines tells you everything you need to know. And within the first paragraph or two, he says, "I'm horrified by what schools are doing today. They're killing the love of learning." This is like 15, 20 years ago. And he gives this example when he was with his son, and he was on a lecture series. He was in Paris. And his son was mature. He's like 15, 16, but more mature for his age. And the son was just fascinated with the tube system and the underground tube system. And he's like, here's $40, have at it. It's like, because the kid just, and so he's like traveling here and traveling there and traveling there. And he fast forward 6 years later, he's now a city planner. And so I say that as an example that it's just, you never know what's going to stick and really inspire your student or your child. And it's by giving them those opportunities. And I didn't mean to digress down that road, but it's a little bit about my background too. But I was born in a creative background. I started writing scripts, movie scripts, when I was 18. I was just taking classes, beginning, and then intermediate, and then advanced. And I was really blessed because I had a phenomenal teacher that was all hooked up with Hollywood. And I remember he'd bring in some actors that you'd be familiar with at the time and talk about story. And so and it's hard. Script writing is probably the hardest type of writing you'll ever do, because if you have a 90-minute movie, you have 90 pages. Technically, it really is. Every page represents a minute. And so when people are coming to you with hey, here's my movie, and it's 300 pages, they're like, what is it, a miniseries, right? Because it's it ain't going to work. And what it does is it teaches you many things. Number one, the 3-act structure. Number two, economy of words. Number three, starting on the action, ending on the action. And number four, tight dialogue. You don't waste words, And so I went through that process for decades, and I wrote multiple scripts, and I worked with a lot of professional script writers that I'd hire, that I'd pay, that were, far above me. I would read my script, and usually I'd submit the 5 pages a week, and then they'd butcher it, and then, and then talk to me about it. And it's you learn stuff I'd have a paragraph of description, and they're like, nope, get it down to 3 lines. And then I'd say oh, this song was playing in the background. They're like, nope, the producer picks that. And then I'm directing, the actors. I'm like, no, director does that. And so again, it's just story. And so subconsciously, when I sat down to write Britfield and Lost Crown, book 1, 30 years later, or 20 years later, I had that script writing background in my mind subconsciously. Wasn't thinking about it. Wasn't saying, oh, I've got all that background. Just started to outline it, and I started to write it. But it's interesting how beautifully the book rolled out into that 3-act structure, and how midpoint, which is so important, middle of the book, usually there's a major revelation or pivoting point. And if you go to book 1, it's almost dead middle, where they crash land at Windsor Castle, is a huge pivoting point. And I didn't try to do that, but I was so well trained subconsciously in writing a story, and not and being tight on description, not over describing. And I think that's where a lot of authors today make that mistake. And we've all done that when we're reading books and stuff. And it's just oh my gosh, another paragraph of this? You know what I mean? He walks into the room, and he takes off his cashmere scarf and gently lays it over the silk couch as it glistens. And it's what the frick does that have to do with the story? I mean, nothing, right? And you just leapfrog, over that. And so, although I do my research, and although I'm descriptive, I don't over describe. And it's for twofold. Number one, it drives the story forward. Number two, I'm relying on you and your mind to fill in. I'll give you a frame, and then you fill it in. I'll describe it. I'll describe a framework of a castle. I'm not going to describe every brick color. You know what I mean? Because I want you to participate in it, and I want it to I'm kind of eliciting creativity out of you within the novels. I'll stop.
Yeah, no, that's great. Gee, isn't that, it's fascinating, because I guess I'm so confused. I thought, you're telling me that the most important thing is tight dialogue and 3-act structure, and and story. And I just thought it was diversity, equity, and inclusion. I thought we just had to have diverse characters.
God, vomit.
So that's not in your equation, huh?
Oh, boy,
amazing.
No.
You know, I joke
yeah.
I joke about that, but you know,
I know.
it really is frustrating that, I mean, they've ruined movies and TV. I mean, you can't.
Yes.
There's nothing
Ruined
funny
it.
on TV anymore, and it's not just because we've gotten older and don't have a sense of humor anymore. It's just not funny. They're not even trying to be funny.
No, it's funny. And we talk about this too. We can pivot into the film and media aspect also if you wanted to, because we're in the we're moving from development to pre-production the next 4 to 6 weeks. So the first of 7 major motion pictures. So this is a finished 3rd draft movie script. This is it's about
Fantastic.
$250,000 and about 15 months of work. Well, we did hire a professional in the industry, but I did come in on the 3rd draft to tighten it up and take it from 168 to 148. So now we have about a 2 hour and 15-minute movie, which is perfect. That's what we're aiming for. It's about 90%, 95% finished. It's ready to go and it's tight. We could talk about films and script writing, but no, it's sad. I mean, there's very little to watch. I was encouraged when Netflix first came out because I loved how they were like beating the model, you know what I mean? And now they are completely off the reservation, and everything they do, practically everything they do is woke, or it's tainted, or it's vile. Then they now have series where it's like there's nudity in it. And I'm like, you need nudity, you know?
Right.
And we know why it exists and how it's designed. And the lie is it's what the public wants, not what we want. You know what I mean? It's just, you control it. And so like with the films, and this is the thing about movies, and I've said this on other programs, and I have the statistics and the research. Believe it or not, every movie that you make from an R to a PG-13, you make more money. Every PG-13 you turn into PG, you make more money. Every profanity word you remove from a movie, you make more money. Every nudity scene you remove from a movie, you make more money. Wow. And family entertainment is the highest grossing category out there. What are they doing? Nothing. What did they do after a little $30 million movie called The Blind Side did $400 million worldwide? Nothing. Gee, we might be onto something here. And I almost find anything that's really been successful out of Hollywood is almost by an accident. It's not to say that everyone in Hollywood's bad. No, 95% of them are great. They're creative. They just want a paycheck. You know what I mean? They're just doing the job. It's the people at the top that are trying to push an agenda and you know, destroy the nation, destroy the family. They hate God, divide the family. It's all fact. It's all truth. It's all run by the usual suspects. And guess what? Hollywood is broke. Hollywood is dead. Hollywood is over. They've been imploding for decades. You're seeing the last days of Hollywood as it was known. And it's an exciting time. It's a renaissance of creativity and a great time for great content. There's an 85% gap worldwide for family-focused, family-friendly content. So if I were to spend the rest of my life writing, I couldn't even come close to fulfilling it. So I say that to your audience as a challenge. You know, if you've been inspired to write or act or theater, look, and it's going to take time. Anything of value takes time. Anything of value is hard work. It's not hundreds of hours. It's often thousands of hours. But get to work, you know, because we've all been called to great things, and it's the time to do it. We're literally in a creative renaissance right now, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I love hearing that. It's something I say a lot on our website. We just need good people to speak up and speak out and get involved in whatever area of life you're in. You know, whether you're a teacher, doctor, a student, whatever it is. But speak up, because you know when everyone's silent, the only people speaking are the top of Hollywood or the top of the corporations or the top of Big Pharma or whatever. And then, or the mainstream media. And then people think that that's mainstream. It's not. Mainstream is what you're doing. And I love this. And that's why I said, I think we're catching you just on the cusp of you kind of blowing up big. Not to say you haven't done, I mean, you've obviously done big things already, but I think it's really getting ready to explode.
But real quick, back to programs.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, like I'm rewatching Frasier. You know,
I just did that.
Yes. To me, I almost think that's just about the best written comedy series in ever. And I was a big Cheers fan, but Frasier was just brilliant. It was genius.
It's perfect.
And so that's what I'm doing. I'm rewatching that. I'm back at USA Network was doing some cool stuff. I watched Royal Pains. I came into that 10 years later. Okay. And that was shot down in the Hamptons and stuff. And that was a cool series. You know what I mean? And about a doctor and his brother. And, it was a clean series. It was good stuff. yeah, and then some of these other series. So that's what I'm doing right now for my entertainment, if you will. I'm going back 10 to 15 years because there is absolutely nothing out there. It's vile. I even tried to watch the Twisters movie, which was just released, and I was kind of hopeful. You know, I thought it'd be fun and stuff. And I liked the Powell, the main actor from. He was good, but it didn't hit, and it was obviously trying to push another agenda. There were two agendas there: her relationship in high school, college. And then her as the woman heroine, and guys are just buffoons and stuff, and she's got to save the day, and but it just didn't work as a story, and that was disappointing too. Let's set aside from practically everything else that's coming out of Hollywood. I mean, it's just garbage.
Yeah. Well, you talk about tight dialogue. I mean, Frasier was one of the absolute best for tight dialogue, and it had heart. I mean, nothing coming out of Hollywood has heart anymore. And
no.
I'm so excited to read your books. Like I said, I just learned about you about 2 weeks ago, but my guess is your books have a lot of heart in them too, and humanity, and so yes, I love that. Well, tell me, I've been meaning to ask. Obviously, you've talked a ton today about born, raised, lived in Southern California, but the books and even the screenplays you wrote earlier in your life you have this connection to Britain. What's the connection there? Do you just a fascination with the country? Why Britain?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of the first questions I get when I was doing our book tour. And I think I mentioned it, but when we launched it, I drove 9,000 miles, visited 23 states, presented over 200 schools, more than 40 to 50,000 students when we launched in 2019. And so gave us a great impact, not only educational system, but a good research from what's happening out there and in schools and what kids like. But no, I lived off and on in England. So I was a British literature major, European history major. Lived off and on in England for about 2 years. I was down in Hampshire for a good year. I was in Richmond for a while, and then been to London maybe 80 times. So yeah, I just and I really love it. And it's everybody, for someone else it's different. Like one of the questions I say is, why does book one take place in England? And I'm like, if you wrote Britfield Lost Crown, yours might take place in Australia, Hawaii, or Colorado, right? It's just you write about what you know, you write about what you love, and I love Britain. I love the people, not the politics, but the people. I love the history. I love the architecture. I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's a gorgeous country, and it's although the sun isn't out much when it is, it's quite beautiful. And so that's kind of why I picked it. It's kind of that beachhead, and again too, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, England was so hugely influential throughout history. At one time, they said, during the Victorian age, they said the sun never goes down on the British Empire because they owned about 25% of the landmass, including Australia. And that's actually still true. So they still control. In fact, MI6 was the one that founded Mossad and the CIA. And that's a whole other story. And their banking system was still controlling us even after the revolution. But anyway, I digress. But no, I do love England. And so that's that fun and that heart. And I think it's kind of fun too, like as an American, to be writing about Britain in book one and getting a lot of people sort of out of their, bubble, whether it's California or whether it's Colorado or whether it's US, and just being in another country, but a real country and a real time. This isn't post-apocalyptic. This isn't 100 years ago. It's right now. In fact, I had to go back this year on the first 3 books. This is the fun of being a writer, and change specifically book one, because everything was referenced to the Queen. And since she had died, I had to go back and I changed it to the royals.
Oh, wow.
And like 40 different changes. I'm like, oh, that's probably mentioned 5 times. I was like, 40 times. And so, because I didn't want it to be dated, if that makes sense. I wanted it to be here and now. And so with that said too, I think it's kind of cool because all the thousands of books that are out there with the Queen are, to me, like collector's items, because it's like, hold on to those babies. Because that's
right.
Yeah.
Like that's the first print. Yeah. Wow. That's why, not to keep taking it back to Frasier, but I do think there's something timeless about you. You went back and watched that show. I just went back and watched that show. It feels like it could happen today. And I think that's what you're doing in your book, which is so interesting. You've said it in current times, but it's also timeless in a certain way. Yeah. That's fascinating.
That was our goal too. And this is a huge undertaking. I mean, we're going for a global phenomenon. We're trying to elevate literature right now and bring it to another level. And in doing that, and we know we're having impact because we get thousands of letters worldwide. I mean, from Germany to Australia to New Zealand. Like, we kept getting orders from this bookstore in New Zealand. How cool is that? In Australia, and like we're selling books and shipping books to South Africa, to Brazil. We actually are already published and translated into Polish. all 3 books of the trilogy. That was our first beachhead and our first international rights. We've got 20 other countries that are ready to translate it into their language. We just picked up India that we're supposed to lock in at the Frankfurt Book Fair. That's huge. About to close South Korea and Japan, so it'll be translated into their languages. That's huge because South Korea is our beachhead for Asia. But it's that type of focus too, because really it's based on family and friendship. You know what I mean? And those are timeless qualities, and so it's not dated into in particular. And my methodology in this, really, because people get caught up in politics, and there's relevancy to it, and shows like you have to cover this stuff, and I don't envy. You have to dig into the dirt and get into it. It's very dark, and that's why I like being on the shows, because I like to try to bring some light and some hope to people, and that it's not just me, but thousands of people are doing incredible things right now and stepping forward, and it's an exciting time. But with that said, I mean, politics come and go, and I've always looked at it, and it's my Dickens analogy, and I said Charles Dickens was around before World War II, during World War II, and after World War II. And the idea is you don't get caught up in 4 years or politics or shifts. You just write great content. Great content will never go out of style. Great stories will never go out of style. And like you said, the books have heart, and it's about family, and about the wonderment of family. And again, it's not just by birth or blood. And I love it because I make a phrase to it at the end of book 1. The orphans up there. I think the youngest is 9 or 10 or something, and the oldest is 17, and they're a tightly knitted family in this horrible orphanage, and any of them would do anything for the other person. And that's a type of family, right? All completely different, none of them born by blood or birth. And so my family content also, is people that come into your life, you know what I mean, that become so pivotal, so strong, such a core, such a foundation, and that's what we're talking about. And then friendship, and how those things are forged, and sacrificing anything for a friend. That's the theme that runs through these things, and that's what we're instilling in kids. We're instilling them values, real, honest values, and creativity, critical thinking, and communication, and etc.
I love this. I don't think I've been this excited about a book that I haven't read yet, but I love it. I really am truly excited to sit down and read this, and read this with my family too. Well, Chad, you talk about raising the bar on literature right now, really trying to do something different, trying to do something better. And I mentioned, you remind me a lot of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and they were notably historically friends. Do you have contemporaries out there doing something similar to what you do? Is there a group forming? Are you seeing other people rise up? I mean, I think you're kind of on your own level, but are you seeing other people start to step into this space and start to do some of this?
I hope so, and I'm sure there is. I'm not familiar with anything currently. Again, too, because it's there's some really good stories out there that are conservative or even Christian, but again, it's it's fantasy, and I don't know why, but every Christian is hooking their wagon to the fantasy world, even though it's biblical, or it's got Christian values and stuff. And again, you're disconnecting kids from reality. There's a great one out there. I think about this whole series of rabbits, and that's all fun. But again, it's just kids can't really relate to that because they're not rabbits. And so I don't know of it, but I'm sure it's out there. But the thing about Lewis is, I'm a big Lewis fan too, and Tolkien was Lord of the Rings took him 17 years to finish, and you probably know the background of it, but he was hammered by the Inklings, that group that would meet in the pubs and stuff, these academics from Oxford, and they were like, "Oh, Tolkien, this stuff's crap. No one's going to read it." And it was only Lewis that, and he was ready to give up. And it was Lewis that said, "No, you need to finish this and get it published." And he finally got it published, and the rest is history. But I say that because that is the norm out there. All these great successes were totally rejected by pretty much everyone, the experts out there. I got 2 great literary agents, but one, you get some insight, and I haven't talked to her for a while, but when The Help came out, remember that movie, The Help?
Oh yeah.
And the book came out. It was a good movie. It was interesting and very successful. That was turned down by 60 literary agents. So no, there's no audience here. And it just goes on and on. And it's just, there's so many examples like that, which is interesting about Little Women, though, which is still, one of those great stories. Love it. I lived in Wellesley, so I was 20 minutes from Concord, Massachusetts. The house is still there, the Alcott house, and you can still go in it. And on the 3rd story attic, there's the desk where she wrote the book Little Women. She wrote it, I think, 10 weeks. So the difference between 17 years and 10 weeks. But it's like, she's kind of at that, and there's a great one out there with Winona Ryder. That's my favorite of the movies out there. It's a classic. It's, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so well done. It's got such heart. Great story, great acting, great cinematography, great music. But she was kind of at that pivoting point, and she needed to write something from the heart, write something good. And so she knew it all. She sat down and boom, like in 8 to 10 weeks, produced Little Women. So
wow,
everything has different things. But this is the one thing I've learned about too, is all great novels come from an area of truth. Even like Lewis, it's based on the 3 kids that visited him during World War II over Christmas. These 3 kids that would run around the house and stuff because they were getting all the kids out of London from the bombing. And boom, lo and behold, he had the spark for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And Tolkien's book, Lord of the Rings, that's based on the 4 what do you call hobbits? Are the hobbits? 4? You call them hobbits? Yeah, they're hobbits, right?
Okay, I think so.
Yeah, are based on. So what's interesting about him is he was an orphan. He was orphaned at a young age, and by a benefactor, he was sent to a top private school. And obviously, at first, coming from poverty, he was just hassled. But he made a tight bond with 3 other boys there, and they became the fictional characters in Lord of the Rings. Wow. A lot of locations of Lord of the Rings are based on locations in England. The Twin Towers was based on 2 large stacks in Manchester or something like that. And it was also based on his experiences in World War I and World War II, I think his son went into. So again, they're writing from the heart. They're writing from something they know. Dickens, I mean, he's the greatest example. Pretty much every book was mirroring current times, real people. I was reading, because I've read their biographies, and I do deep dive searches into it. You want to know your audience or your competition or what you're up against. And but Dickens would come out with like a new one, like Oliver Twist, and he'd have like this villainous lawyer, and there'd be someone that was based on, and he'd read it, and he'd know it was him. He changed the name and stuff. He's like, "You son of a," that's Dickens. Like, you get in trouble sometimes. It's so funny, but very authentic, very real. And so he's writing from the heart. He's writing about what he knew, writing about what he liked, or wanted to expose. And so, yeah, it's all like that. I mean, Ian Fleming, the James Bond series. I mean, it's very accurate in the sense of he was with I think it was the OSS or OSS, which eventually would become MI6 during World War II. And he was part of, and there was Meat Spent, Netflix with Colin Firth, called, I think it's called Meat Mince or something like that, based a little bit on an operation, and Fleming was actually involved in it. And so he did. So he took his experiences working with them and gadgets and gadgetry and turned it into, the James Bond series, a very successful series. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes, fascinating. And the fun thing about that, and you probably know, your audience might know about it, but it's again based on reality. And he actually was trained as a doctor and even a surgeon up in Edinburgh, Scotland. Came from poverty, and but got into the university, wanted to be a doctor. Based Sherlock Holmes on a particular doctor or professor that was training him. And so the students would be standing around the room, and there'd be a corpse there, and they'd sit there and say, "What can we derive from this corpse?" And they're like, "I don't know, he's dead," And they're like, "Well, no, look at his fingers." He goes, "You can tell that they're yellowed, and there's a certain type of soil there. And look at his beard, and look at his skin, how it's chapped, and look at his pants. He came from a regiment in India." And so like this is like the professor does this just so they could note, and he based his Sherlock Holmes character like off that. And I just thought that was so cool. So I'll stop talking, but it's, I'm just making a point where, it's, you write about what you know, you write from your heart. I write about places I've been, like England. That's why book 1's in England. I love France. You know what I mean? And I've never had a problem with France. You know what I mean? They're French or French, but I've just never had a problem. Oh, it's like, I don't know. I didn't have a problem. But I visited and drove through there. And Italy, it's like amazing and beautiful. So book 3's in Italy, and then Eastern Europe, Vienna. Oh my gosh, I love Vienna. I've been there. Prague, incredible, Berlin. And so like that's Russia, St. Petersburg, huge scene at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia, been there. And so it's a great way for me to sort of recount some of these wonderful travel experiences, but bring it in a fast-paced adventure novel and share it with you, the audience. And whether you've been there or you haven't been there, you get to go there and get to travel and get to experience it. So
That's very cool. Well, I'll one more '90s TV reference, I guess. You talk about Sherlock Holmes, which of course inspired the famous Doctor House. Another
Oh, right.
great
Yeah.
show, great heart, great writing. Just doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, I mean, you're just naming one after another, and I hope what you said there, talking about other people and the story about how Tolkien wouldn't have even published if he didn't get encouraged from C.S. Lewis. I hope that inspires someone listening to this. If that's you, if you're kind of buzzing right now, like, oh, that's me, maybe I should do it. Go do it. The world needs more. The world needs more people like you. The world needs more people like Chad out there doing their thing. So I hope that inspires someone to go take the plunge, because we need more of this stuff out there.
There's a great quote. Never let someone else's opinion become your reality.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Yeah, go create your own reality. Well, listen, I want to talk about the movies here and back to the books in just a minute too. But I wanted to ask, you talked about your agent and then your publisher. Have you did you encounter any trouble finding a publisher for this? Or has it gone great? Because this world is tough, and like you said, they rejected help wanted 60 times. How did it go for you finding those people?
Yeah, I've got a great literary agent out of New York and an international rights agent out of France, and I've been published before by Pelican Publishing, and they're one of the largest middle size. Been around for 100 years prior to the Britfield series, but for this and for what we were going to do, we actually built our own publishing house. And
Wow.
So we've spent 5 years, probably $2.5 million building our own publishing house. So this is an all-in next, quarter of a century. I burned the bridges a long time ago, back for retreat. You know what I mean? Like, well, work out. I'm like, no, bridges are gone.
Wow.
Which is incredible. So it's a huge undertaking. I'm not necessarily saying that's the answer for everybody, but I knew the importance of this series. I knew that we needed complete creative control. I know that the publishing industry doesn't know anything about publishing or story. And as I've been saying for literally for years, they're still based on a 1970s model, peddling 8-track players.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know, like statistics for books, every 100 books that are published traditionally, 97 fail to make a profit. Mm-hmm. Most published books sell between 300 to 500 within their lifetime. And if a book does anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000, it's remarkable. And it's just become even worse than it was before, because it's just pushing agenda-oriented crap that, frankly, nobody wants to read. The whole best-selling New York Times bestseller stuff, nonsense, flashover substance, paid to play. Critics, especially when you see these horrendous democrat governors or with their biographies, and it's a New York Times bestseller and it's sold millions. It hasn't sold shite because there is no audience for that crap and no one's reading it. So, and all those statistics are make believe and fantasy. So it was just on Dave Hodges' show about 20 minutes ago, Common Sense show, and so it's like we were going real deep in some of the stuff. So I'm trying to like avoid it, but it's just like we were
no, it's good.
Deep. Yeah. So, but no, yeah, and so that's a very different model. You know what I mean? And this is a big undertaking for us. But with that said, out there are some good boutique publishers out there, and there's a lot of different methods and stuff. But it's like anything, it's a tough industry, and you're selling. It's hard too, because you're selling a widget at a time, one book at a time. Meaning, if I was a lawyer, and I'm promoting something, it's like I get one client that could be worth X amount of dollars, right? Or if I'm a doctor or or whatever it is, like clients have more value in that sense. I'm as a publisher or as an author, it's like one book at a time. You know what I mean? That's one widget at a time. Wow. So it's tough. Yeah.
So you've created your own publishing house. Is that entirely just to run your own stuff, or are you looking to bring on other authors?
We will be looking to bring on other authors, which is cool, and we'll expand that. I mean, we're building a whole infrastructure studio that'll be behind the Britfield movies. We can get into that, television, the whole bit. And then again, too, it's like, I'm not trying to be all things to all people. Where there's quality, we go to it. Where there's something already set up that's a great model, we'll use it. You know what I mean? I don't need to like reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? But in most circumstances, it's needed. And we're even looking at that from a distribution model. But like we've already launched in June. We just launched it in Britain through a British distributor. Which is exciting. So this Britfield series is rolling out right now through England, and I'm excited about that. And we just started another massive campaign. I'm going to be doing a book tour there in March for 4 weeks around the London Book Fair. We're going to be doing another book tour in Eastern Europe for 8 weeks, 10 countries. So yeah, we've got all kinds of things that are planned, things that are rolling out, and this is the big thing. We don't need anyone's permission, right? And I want to say that to everyone that's listening. You don't need anyone's permission to go out and do something,
right?
And most of that, and they put it all out there as at the upper echelon, or it's like hard to break into. Then reinvent it. We've already seen what's happening, and all these models are fading and crumbling. The whole publishing industry is crumbling. There's a massive distributor representing about 400 publishers that 3 weeks ago just went bankrupt, and has left them all high and dry to the tune of millions of dollars. So all these, some of them were even small little publishers that were distributed through this big conglomerate. And guess what? They're not going to get paid their 50 or 100,000. There's going to be a lot of publishing companies that will go bankrupt because of this. This is not surprising to me. I've been saying it for years, and I got the inside track on that 8 weeks ago from my literary agent, Lori, in France, because she was actually offered the CEO job 3 years ago. And she goes, I took a look at their financials and it was terrible, And I'm like, gee, go figure. When you start peddling crap that no one wants to read, what do you think's going to happen? And you're seeing that in Hollywood. I said that before. It's crumbling. Hollywood's bankrupt. They've been bankrupt for years. So they're held together right now with Scotch tape and toothpicks and an occasional Pixar movie that's done $1.6 billion. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, so Chad, tell me about, let's summarize the books first, then we'll go to the movies. Books 1, 2, and 3 are out. Book 4 is coming. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm really excited about book 4. It's our keystone in the 7-book series, meaning it's a shift. You had your first 3 books, and the first three books always represents the trilogy. Again, I'm going to reference Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. But and then you have book 4. And it's cool because it's a couple things have changed in book 4. We actually include 11 countries, which is kind of the new model. So it's not like, whereas book 1 was just in England and book 2 was just in France. Now we're including multiple countries, and it's coming in at 460 pages, which is amazing. I was actually 18 months ago, I was shooting for 450, so I got close. And it's great. It starts in Vienna, shifts, moves to Bratislava, to Prague, Krakow, Warsaw, Berlin, the Baltic Ocean, Lithuania, Estonia, parts in Budapest, and finally the last third of it is in St. Petersburg and Moscow, Russia. And there you go. There's some cool pictures. Well done. Yeah. So and actually, if you want to go up again and look at the cover, we'll talk about this for a minute. So it's really kind of fun because there it is. Yeah. There's Tom and Sarah, and then there's little Hunter. I don't want to give anything away, but they're now 15 years old, and that's the Hermitage I was talking about. Isn't that cool? That's the famous museum. It's probably the most extraordinary museum in the world, frankly. Although that could be argued. It's just amazing. And that's my graphic designer, Tiffany. She's done all 4 covers. She's just rocking it. We spent about 3 months on that to get it to where it is. And it's different. You see the shift where the first 3 books are sort of outside, more darker. This has a little bit more light into it. This is early morning, April. We always have our lightning a little bit in the back. It's always kind of symbolic. And so it's exciting. They're actually looking at some plans because they're going to be breaking in to the Hermitage Museum to steal back a Britfield artifact. Cool as that.
I love it. All right, so that's book 4 coming soon.
Yeah, let me add this real quick because what's interesting is, like, I've got to really figure it out too. Like, how would you get in there? What's the security like? And so the things make sense. I have fun with it. I mean, come on, it's fiction. But I don't suspend reality. You know what I mean? And I think that's what makes it really interesting. I've got to do the due diligence. I got to do the research. Things have to make sense. I don't want my audience saying, "Oh, come on," or "Oh, really?" And so I really walk it through. And I love book 4. It is a paradigm shift in my writing too. It's a lot more intense. It's very packed. It's got a lot of great stories and subplots. A lot of great character development for the first 3, as you would expect and hope as a writer. Some amazing revelations, a huge twist at the end is going to blow you away for any audience that's reading this series. So it is cool, and we're excited. So we'll be launching that in October. And again, real quick. So one of the main themes in this, and we always spread this through, and this is the kind of current reality, is the committee, which are behind the scenes. They're tracking down. They're trying to capture Tom and Sarah. and there's a group called the Resistance that's protecting them, based a little bit on the World War II resistance, behind the scenes. They're the ones that are getting out the word. They're like you're the Resistance, right? Your podcast. And so it's really based a lot on that. It's very realistic. And so the committee's got, and everything always takes place over 1 week. And so the committee is trying to bring back and recreate their quantum computer system, which was destroyed at the end of book 3, thanks to us, the Resistance. And what they're trying to do is they're introducing, it's a quantum computer system, quantum encryption run by AI. And so we talk a little bit about AI, the dangers of AI, that it's not a good thing, as all these other puppet masters are out there. Or useful idiots are peddling, oh, AI. It's like going to replace 90% of all accounting jobs in the next 5 to 7 years, 50% of all medicine and medical, but by all means, keep promoting it. So what they're trying to do is within 7 days, they're going to crash the global stock market, wipe out trillions of dollars in wealth, buy it back pennies on the dollar, and then introduce a one world digital currency. And anyone that doesn't accept it, any country that doesn't accept it, are cut off. And so they starve to death. What just happened 2 weeks ago?
Right.
And so it's almost like frightening. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, whoa. So that's how these books are. I mean, they're very prophetic. I remember when book 2 came out. I mean, they're not prophetic in the sense that I do my research and like, just like you, we pulled the curtain. We know their plans. So for the general audience, it's like, whoa, how does he know this stuff? It's like, because I just do my research. But I mean, when book 2 came out, people were like, oh my gosh, like, what are you, prophetic? Because I'd written it like 5 years before. I'm like, nope, I just did my research. So.
Wow. Yeah. So many topics that are just breaking in the news. You got artificial intelligence, quantum computers, AI, stock market, one world digital currency, stuff that we talk about all the time. They're in the books. You're both educating on the topics and warning about them, and then people can see how they play out in a narrative, real world format. So that's amazing. Okay, so book 4 comes out soon. You obviously have a sweet spot in your heart for book 4, that's a good one for everybody. There will be 7 total, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Book 5 is Asia, which I'll start writing next year, but not looking forward to it. I'm like literally exhausted. It really is. It's interesting. I just got done reading. I'm a big researcher myself, a reader. I love biographies. I love and an 800-page biography is good for me. 400 is kind of like a leaflet. A 400-page biography is like a magazine. But I just got done with a 1,000-page biography on Churchill. And I know there's controversy around him, but interesting figure in history. And I loved the whole World War II and what was happening back then and stuff. But he said something, and he was quite the writer. In fact, I really think he wrote 6 volumes on the World War II. Paid a fortune to do it too after he stepped down from prime minister. But he said something that was very accurate. I got to get the phraseology, but he said once you start writing, it's like a dance and a romance. And he says as you get into it, it gets a little more intense, and then it's like a wrestling match. And he says that finally, at the very end of thousands of hours, you finally have conquered the monster. And I just feel like that's for any novelists out there, for any writers, it's like that's how it is. It is a long, hard, exhausting period that the book will take everything it possibly can out of you. Is that a good way to say it? Like if it can suck any more marrow out of your bones, it will, because that's what you put into it. So there you go.
Well, so I don't know how you do it then, because you've already written 4 books, and now you've completed the first movie script, or you're close to it.
Finished.
Finished. Yeah. So how it's incredible. I don't know how you find time to do it or find the energy, but it's amazing. Tell us about the movie now. Now you're shifting gears. When does the movie come out? What's the process like for that? You can't start up your own movie house, or can you? What are you doing with that? Who are you partnering with? How's it coming together?
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I do come from a little bit of film background, so I'm not a novice. I've got a great producer team, father and son. The father had been in the business for over 40 years, so basically knows everybody in the industry. And again, too, there's a lot of good people in the industry. And it's cool because like his son, they grew up in Los Angeles. I can't think of the area, but beautiful area. And so it's like his son would go to birthday parties with from a private school, like a boy he knows, and his dad's like vice president of 20th Century Fox. You know what I mean? So it's those kind of connections that are very rich. So it's not like we know somebody at Columbia. It's like he's good friends with the daughter's father, you know what I mean, or whatever. So So that's very cool. It's been in development for over 2 years. And we just finished the script. It was a 15-month process. I think I mentioned that. And in March of this year, we did a read-through, which was great, with 12 professional actors. So we had 6 adults and 6 children, and it was a beautiful boardroom, and we recorded it, and we were kind of sitting at the end, and they were just reading through it. And we'd take a break every 30 minutes, kind of on the natural, act 1, act 2 and stuff, and then discuss it. And we were taking notes, recording it, and it was kind of, if you will, it gave us that final polish.
Mm-hmm.
The next step would remove from actually filming, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So it was a great natural process. So the script is tight, it's 95% there. It's never going to be 100%, and there is no script that's 100%.
Right.
And most scripts aren't even that close. And this is number one, they're not based on a story, they're based on an idea. That's why they fail in the box office. Number two, it's agenda oriented, and so it has no heart to it. But where most filmmakers make the problem is they don't have a tight script that's based on all story and great dialogue, and they don't go through the process. So when they get out there, anything that happens, we'll call it the magic, right? You know what I mean? Like, then it's exciting. If an actor improvs or they come up with a little bit of dialogue, that's okay. You can deviate from it. I'm like all over that.
Right.
But you can't expect anything to work itself out there. Well, we haven't quite worked the scene out. Well, it'll work once we start filming. No, it won't. And you're going to be burning through hundreds of thousands of dollars a day.
Yeah.
Trying to make it work. It's got to work on the paper, the script, the story. Story is everything. It's got to follow the 3-act structure. It's got to, I even have it's like an assigning incident within 5 to 6 minutes. Plot point 1 starts at 26 to 28 minutes. Midpoint is dead in the middle. I mean, these are just factors that your story has to have to make it a great narrative. We as a film audience know this subconsciously. Right. But if you watch good movies that work, and all of a sudden it's like, 30 minutes into it, all of a sudden it's like everything was going great, and all of a sudden he just lost his job and he's been kicked out of his apartment. And you look at the time slot, 30 minutes, 29 minutes, 28 minutes, midway through, right at that halfway mark, you know what I mean? All of a sudden everything was going so great, and all of a sudden you found out your mom's alive. You know what I mean? Like, big revelation. You know what I mean? Like, we're used to it, if that makes sense, and it works. And so anyway, back to the film. So we're excited. So we've spent a lot of time building the team, building the infrastructure, business plan, research on the industry, revenue models. A lot of things are happening. We can dive into that real quick on that, because it's very interesting on the revenue models. And then
sure,
we've already got a well-known, prominent distributor that will be for the film, but it will be shot independently outside of Hollywood, because there's not a single reason in the world that Hollywood do it. Number one, they don't. Yeah. Anyway, so we're actually building our own team around that, and we'll probably use an independent production team and stuff. But we will hire. I'm looking at a couple really great directors that I'm hoping. These are like blockbuster directors that are used to the transition from a successful novel into a successful film franchise without giving anything away, and that are good working with kids. You know what I mean? So
sure.
You wouldn't get Cameron from Titanic, who's a psychopath anyway. But I mean, you don't get someone that's like used to these sort of high level, or even like the directors of Mission Impossible. That would be great, because it's like got that high octane, but they're not used to kids, and it's a very unique balance, and family too. I wouldn't call Mission Impossible family movies, although they're entertaining and I like them, and they keep heart. I think they keep within that PG-13. Go figure, and that's why they're successful. So so I'd say in the next 4 to 6 weeks we'll be transitioning into pre-production. We're very close to sort of reaching out to industries experts. I think the first major press release will be when we lock in our director. The director is going to be key for this, because he's the captain of the ship. I think what's interesting about this series is that it's a 7-book series, hence 7 movies. We will make 7 movies. We're not waiting on anything or anybody to do these movies. There is no more time delay for us. It's been a long process, not just on the movie, but on everything. And need I remind everybody, as of March 2020, we had a 2-year shutdown. So remember, we launched Britfield and Lost Crown Book 1 in August 2019. I was in Memphis, Tennessee, on our book tour, and guess what? March 2020, all the schools started to close down. All the bookstores started to close down. So it's like, and people are still recovering from that. The whole, film industry was basically shut down.
Mm-hmm.
What you also have is you have a huge backlog. So, things that didn't get done and weren't accomplished and completed. And so but with the first film, we're very excited about it. We're hoping to be shooting in England spring of next year.
Okay.
Expedite that quickly. And then we're now looking at a release date of November 2026 globally.
Okay.
And I think that's realistic. And I'm not pushing that into 2027. I don't need to. But by putting November 2026, I think that gives us plenty of time. And the thing about this too is we're calling the shots, so there's no bureaucracy and BS. Not that doesn't happen. We're controlling the purse strings and the money. Yeah, and so we're not like fiddling around when we got half of it. We're going out and filming, and then we run out of money. And that happens a lot of movies. And it's not a difficult movie to necessarily film in the grand scheme of things because it takes place in present time, so it's easy to costume. We don't have a lot of special effects because it's all about story and intensity. And we could talk about that if you want to come back to that.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Setting that intensity. And then we have about half of it interior shots. And so we're not relying on a lot of exterior shots. It's not a James Bond movie in the sense it is and it isn't. But it's like, we don't have these like gnarly stunt scenes and a car flying off a cliff. And, what I mean? We're not doing any of that. And so, a lot of that takes a lot of planning and a lot of insurance and stuff, all that stuff. And
sometimes that's fun, Chad, and I know people like it, but sometimes I just get tired of a 15-minute car chase scene. Michael Bay movie where everything's exploding for an hour at a time. It's like get back to the plot and get back to the dialogue.
Yes, and so we could swing back to that real quick. Let's hook onto that. But anyway, so that's kind of what we're at right now. What we're planning. March of next year, we'll already start transitioning book 2 into a feature-length movie script. And so the idea is every 2 years, a new movie will come out. So the first one is our sort of pilot, meaning we're pulling everything together. We're shifting into that. And again, too, you don't want to get ahead of the cart, right? The horse before the cart. As we're rolling out with the Britfield book series, we have to hit a certain sort of zenith, if you will, or a certain level. We're getting there. We've just launched globally as of July. And then, we're going to start popping all over, Europe and Eastern Europe and Asia with the books and the international rights and stuff. So everything is paralleling beautiful. I always said that the Britfield series is like the D-Day landings, and I've got all my ships coming into shore. And so, everything's got to be timed, correctly and stuff. But so the first movie, we're excited. We anticipate, based on our research, that the first Britfield Lost Ground movie will be one of the highest grossing films in cinematic history. That we will break box office records, and we will create a phenomenon that you haven't seen since Star Wars 1977.
Amazing. I love it.
And so then what we'll be doing is a little break, and then we'll transition into movie 2. So it's not like, let's see how the first one does. No, we're moving on next, and then we're on to movie 2, and then movie 3, and we'll be shooting in France. And we don't have to film, in England, and we won't be filming all of it in England. But along with these books, I love the authenticity. So as long as England gives us some love, which they need to, you know what I mean? Because it's going to be great for tourism. And I mean, huge for tourism.
Yes.
Even Harry Potter couldn't be great for tourism because there's really not a lot to see there. It's a fictional world.
Right.
My book starts up in Yorkshire and then Oxford and then Windsor. I mean, how many kids are going to go to Windsor now? London, Hyde Park, St. James, Mayfair, St. Paul's Cathedral. I travel all over, and then finally Canterbury Cathedral. I mean, this is a dream for the country. So as long as the tax credits are in order, we're not fiddling around with nonsense. I'm going to film at least 40% there. I like that authenticity. I want to film there in England. It's kind of interesting though. If you saw the recent Napoleon movie, and again, I'm a historian buff and stuff, so I watched it.
Okay.
It's like a $200 million budget with Joaquin Phoenix, and is that right, Joaquin Phoenix? And as Napoleon, and it was okay as a film. And I've read the biographies and stuff, but that whole thing was shot in England. I just thought, what the frick? Really? And that guy could film anywhere in the world, right? But it's just like, it is interesting. I'm saying that as a point that you don't need to film. And you wouldn't know as the audience. You'd know no different. Usually what they do is they have an opening shot of London, and some boats along the Thames, and then, the London Eye, and then boom, next scene's this little cobblestone street. And, and it's like that cobblestone street is some studio in Detroit. You know what I mean? Like it could be anywhere. That's why they call Toronto Hollywood North. You know, most of the New York stuff you're seeing filmed in television series is shot in Toronto. So, or even Vancouver, which is interesting. But it makes sense. I mean, you can't shut down necessarily shut down a block or 2 blocks in New York and for a 1 minute shot, it's going to take you 3 days. You know, it just seems like, so it's not like, okay, we just need for an hour. Good luck with that. You know, it takes you an hour just to set up, you know, so.
Right. Now, once you get going, I know there's a lot you can do in production and makeup and everything else, but you do have 2 main characters that start at age 12 and age 1 year with every book. Are you shooting these movies in rapid succession then to keep that age genuine as you go through?
Yeah, and we're shooting in the rapid succession for all the reasons. There's no reason to stall, you know, because it's like once the first movie comes out, it's like, you know, people want the second one, and it's great entertainment and great family entertainment. So you don't want to stall or drag that out. But yeah, we'll be looking at 2 up and coming. Talented British actors. They'll probably be 15, but look very young, if that makes sense. They have a youthful look. It's not to say that they won't be 12, but yeah, but they probably go back to age 5 or 6 since they've been in the game. You know what I mean? Like theater, commercials. So there's a great maturity, professionalism. Most of the other adult actors will be well-known actors that you'll see. Again, character actors. You know, we've got our dream list, so we'll see. And again, too, it's not even that they wouldn't be interested. It's just conflict. You know, they might be part of this project, so you got to go with somebody else. For a while, I mean, I really wanted Colin Firth as my Detective Gowerstone. In fact, Detective Gowerstone was based on Colin Firth, but he's aged out. He's like 63, 64 now, so that won't work. But we've got a really cool actor that we're hoping to get, and you'd be familiar with him, and he's been in some good stuff. He'd be perfect for it, and so, but we'll see. And I'm flexible, and Professor Hainsworth. You haven't read it yet, but he's like an older academic that helps Tom and Sarah and get to London, and so that'll be a great role for one of your seasoned character actors in his 70s, maybe even 80s, which would be kind of cool. So we're excited about that. But I will say this, I'm trusting part of the process. We've got a great team behind it, and with the casting agents too, they're going to see things that you didn't. And my greatest example would be, after Pierce Brosnan left the Bond series, you're like, oh my gosh, who's going to be the next one? And all of a sudden it's this guy, Daniel Craig, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
right. That goofball, really, look at it, like he hasn't even done anything. All of a sudden he comes out, it was like, whoa, like, oh my gosh, the guy's awesome. Like, he was a great Bond. You know what I mean? I mean, he killed it, and it was edgy and real and raw, and I think really Ian Fleming, the way that Ian Fleming wanted it. But and I grew up with Roger Moore. That was my era. And I like Pierce Brosnan. I was a big what's the series? Remington Steele fan, the series, and I'm like, oh, they got to get him and stuff. And but no, I use that as an example. You just don't know what people will see in another actor, and often the actor doesn't even see it. So we'll see. We'll see who's cast and how that comes together. But it is a long run for some of the main actors, like Detective Gowerstone. He'll go through the whole series. Right. Tom and Sarah. There's a small character we introduced called Oliver. He's a sophomore at Oxford, Christchurch, Oxford University, and we bring him back big in book 2 and 3, and so he's one of those main characters that drives through it. I've already got the perfect actor for him. I really hope I get him. Yeah.
So Chad, I mean, what's the plan? Do you clone yourself now at this point? Because if I'm paying attention, you've got 3 more books to write and 6 more movie scripts to write. Are you going to be doing those simultaneously? You're going to be busy.
Yeah, it is. It's I do work 7 days a week. I work about 70, 80 hours a week. I do take breaks. I don't get 3 hours of rest. I get 6 to 8. I have fun. I work out. You know what I mean? But it is a full-time role for me. And when I have experts to use, I will use them. And when I can, have someone else do something, I'm not like that. I'm not writer, director, producer, actor. You're just like, you kidding me? Like, you can do all those things exceptionally well. Not, So, yeah. And with the second script, I'm looking forward to hiring a great script writer for that. I was semi-disappointed in our first round It just didn't. I did a lot of research. I waited a long time to nurture that relationship, and would have been more than happy to hand it off for the second one. So again, it's you got to be something careful. But with that said, I'll probably translate book 2 into the first draft movie script and then bring somebody in. I'm not messing around anymore. I'm not wasting time. That was a long process. 15 months. Like the first draft, I had to produce 37 pages of notes. Are you kidding me? And the thing is I already translated the book into a theatrical play for middle schools and high schools, which we launched 18 months ago to great success. So it's now available. You can actually now, if you're a school, homeschool group, theater program, you can put on the Britfield Lost Crown theatrical play. It's got speaking roles for 30 actors. We've got a director's script, actor's script, director's notes, scene by scene, lighting, setup, staging, 28 sound effects, 54 digital slides. So the scriptwriter had that. And so what I did as the writer of the Britfield Lost Crown book, which is a successful story, it works, people love it, 384 pages, I got it down to 90 pages. You as a scriptwriter, you had the opportunity for an extra 45 to 50 pages. So, and what I did is I got it down to the core. Like, can I still make the story work and understandable in 90 minutes, or 90 pages? And I did. You know what I mean? And so there's no excuse for failure. You know what I mean? And it's like, with the first draft, it was like introducing a scene that didn't exist. I'm like, why are you adding a scene? It's like, and then they were like in the first draft, like 50 minutes into it, they're still at the orphanage. I mean, are you kidding me? Yeah, that's a problem. So the final script, end of act 1, 30 minutes out of the orphanage. And so, again, there's a great quote. It says Lincoln wasn't great because he was born in a log cabin, but because he got out of it. and I always love to say, it's like, it's not a story about being in an orphanage. It's about getting out of it, because the story starts, right? I mean, the story's great as they're in the orphanage and you get in the background, but I'm like, it's the adventure when they're out of the orphanage. Are you kidding me? 45, 50 minutes of the movie and you're still stuck at the orphanage? Then what happened is like, I knew as I'm reading it and getting ticked, I'm like, you're not going to leave yourself any time for London, and London's the main payoff. And it's like he almost breezes through London because he's now out of page count, and it's like it was a disaster. So,
so it sounds like the book, or the movie will be very true to the book then.
It is, yeah, and the reason is we're controlling it, and that comes back to that creative control. There's no agenda, there's no nonsense, and there's none of this filth and garbage that's out there. So,
well, and it sounds like a silly question, but I still remember I used to love reading the John Grisham books, and I would read those, and then you'd go see the movie, and it would have a different ending than what like it would be a slight twist, but it'd be like, well, that didn't happen in the book, and I just never understood that. So very strange how you'd go to those movies and be like, well, that's not what I read in the book.
It's interesting though, and that's a great point and a great analogy is that, and I don't know Grisham's background, and obviously talented writer. I mean, The Firm was just incredible as a story, simple but powerful. But like I came at this with a movie script background. So like these literally like 90% of the feedback we get from readers is it reads like a movie, and I didn't try to do that, but that's my training. And so I think it's such a natural transition into the movie, right? And I've already got the plot, the twists, and it's already based on the 3-act structure and the different plot point 1, plot point 2, and all that. Actually, if you go to theater, play. There you go. Oh no, you were there. Play. Yeah, click that. Yeah, so that's cool. That's that neat. That's our little staging.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And this is you're saying schools could get this and put on this play at their school.
Right now, yeah. If you go down, keep going down. There's our cast. Isn't that cool?
Very
30
cool.
actors, and there it is. It's 3 month. You can license it for 3 months. Look at everything that included. Download actor's script, director's notes, sound effects.
Amazing.
Opening, transition, music, media kit. I mean, everything. It's good to go. And even the poster, the Britfield poster, you just put your school presents. Come on. But
very cool.
Yeah. So to answer that question, yeah, I think like that's not happening in ours, but it happens for a lot of reasons in film, and sometimes too, it's like they're like, oh, they left that scene out. Well, unless you want a 4-hour movie, you know what I mean. And so even with Britfield, There's a really great scene at the beginning called the book exchange, and it's fun and it's classic and it works. But I knew from day one like that was going to be cut. You know what I mean? Because it's like I just don't have the time to do it. I do reference it, and I do kind of a little bit of a collage of shots, which are great. But you pick and choose. You got to be careful with it. So it was hard. It was hard, but I think it's going to be as succinct and accurate. I don't think it'll disappoint. In many ways, I think the movie is going to be extraordinary because I can sit here and describe Yorkshire or the beautiful rolling green hills of England and the red tile roofs. Wait do you see it? You know what I mean? Like, wait do you see that 1 second when it comes up on the screen? It's going to blow your mind. Oxford and the beautiful buildings and the architecture and the streets and the cabs zipping by and the students and I bring that to life in the book, but man, when you see it on the screen, I mean, it's going to be transformational. So I'm excited about it. But no, the thing I wanted to say real quick, circling full back on the whole movie script idea, and you said it too, it's kind of cool, but what happens is they run out of story, so they throw in a lot of explosions, right?
Right.
Or the chase scene or the Michael Bay, right? And so I've been very, very aware of that. And although book one has a lot of fun chase scenes and stuff, you develop as a writer, but it's creating the tension. And I do that through the entire book, especially in 3 and 4. And my favorite quote was by Alfred Hitchcock, and he goes, "If I'm filming a scene and you see these 4 mafia guys sitting around a table, with like a draped table playing poker." Smoking cigars, drinking beers, and playing poker, it's a boring scene. But if you as the audience know that there's a time bomb underneath that table ticking away, then every single second you're waiting for that thing to explode. You know what I mean? And it's like suddenly there's a close-up of him looking at his cars and the guy's drinking his glass. And then, you know what I mean? And it's like you're waiting for it to explode. I mean, that tension. And so that's a great way to create tension when you don't have to necessarily have the chase scene. And the great example is when Tom and Sarah escape from a situation in book 3, and they're trying to get to the safe house in Lake Como. What they don't know is parked out front of the house in this van are the bad guys, watching the house closely and waiting for someone to come inside. Tom and Sarah are oblivious to this and sneak in the back and come into the kitchen. And so you're creating this tension that at any minute they're going to be caught, they're going to be seen, door's going to bust in. And I don't even need to pay off on that, if that makes sense. But I've created that tension, and I do a lot of that in my book, where it's like you as the reader, the audience, know that something's happening, and I've created that tension, which just elevates that scene, and it makes it more intense.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Yeah, that oftentimes when you do a scary movie the right way, the scariest part is not the actual moment; it's the building tension. Yeah,
yeah. It's the creak. It's the door sliding open. Right.
Yes.
There's a great, I mean, I loved The Fugitive with Harrison Ford. And that's one of my best examples of a movie that's written with that kind of tension. When he breaks out, like he's basically going to be executed. I think he's been accused of murdering his wife. And so he's in that bus, and then it derails, and when he gets out and he escapes. And now you have Tommy Lee Jones, seasoned, hunter, veteran.
Oh yeah.
But it's like every second that Harrison Ford, he's walking into the hospital, he walks into a room. They've created that tension, and I love the tension in that movie. He's walking across the street. It's like, boo, cop car. You hear the whistle, but it's just because they create it, and it's just like every single second, every time he turns a corner, there's a knock at the door. Who is it? They created that tension, and I think it's a great example of making that movie work. It's a great story. It's interesting, great acting. Tommy Lee Jones won Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Hello, so he knocked it out of the park. But I think it's just a great example of a movie that creates that sort of tension that at any second something can happen, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat. You know what I mean? And yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is really fantastic. It's been amazing to chat with you, Chad. I have a feeling that this was a brief window in time. I'm so glad that you were able to come on. I have a feeling that in a year from now, you may be way too busy to do a lot of interviews like this. So it's truly been an honor to be able to sit down and get to chat with you and before the movie goes live and before the new books come out. So this is awesome. Let me wrap it up. I bet people are
Sure.
wanting to know. All right. How do I get plugged in? Of course, you can you are on Amazon. So I think I showed this earlier. Sometimes
Correct.
that's easier for people. I did want to ask, is there also, I see Audible, is there an audio version of the book too?
There is. It's awesome. It's just, we
Okay.
just done it for book 1. We want it. Well, we will do it for book 2 and 3. We hired a seasoned award-winning British voice talent, Ian Russell. And so he did the entire book 1. I think it's 11 hours, maybe 11 and a half. He does all the characters.
Wow.
And we've actually won a Mom's Choice Gold medal for the audio version, and tons of awards, and it's great. And I get that some people like the audio version, or if they're driving, I think it's perfect for kids if you're driving on a trip, or even if you want to just come, if you just, you have time at home now with your kids, and maybe every Saturday you guys do something fun, sit around the house for like 30 minutes or an hour and listen to a segment, and then go out and do something fun or something. I mean, just have fun with it and stuff. So we do have that, and obviously e-book and hardcover, softcover. So
if okay, and then also I'll put the links to all this below the video wherever you're watching this. Rumble, Twitter, wherever, YouTube. We'll have the links below. But so you can go to Amazon. I'll put that link, but you can also just go directly to Britfield.com, and then they've got this store here. If they go through that audiobook, how do they get that? Is it just a direct download? Is it a CD?
Yeah, it's a direct download. I think it's it's through Amazon, and I think it's through whatever device that is.
Okay.
I think that's like 90% of the market. So
great. And then you've got the books on here too. Do they get anything special if they order through your website?
Yeah, which is great. I mean, if you order through the website, and they're pretty fair priced, with that said, but you get a signed copy, and I won't be signing too many more books. I'm just getting very, very busy, but I like doing it. It's fun. So you actually have a signed copy. I myself, as an author, love to get a signed copy from other authors.
Oh yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's real. It's personable. I still have a signed book from John Cleese of his autobiography. How cool is that? So
nice.
And then you get a bookmark, a little Britfield bookmark, which is cool, and a nice little Britfield sticker of our crest. It's great for kids. So yeah, so that's kind of a neat way to do it. They're great gifts. I mean, really, they're fun. They're fun reads for adults. They're great reads for children, grandkids. They make great gifts. We have so many people that are repeat purchasers through the website, but they're buying it for someone else, and I love it. Like they live in Oregon, but we're shipping it out to Texas to some grandkid. So I love that. So we do a lot of that. They're great gifts, and especially with the holiday coming up, great birthday presents. In fact, I just sent one out a week ago. It was the child's 18th birthday. She's a big Britfield fan, so she got 3 signed books, and I even threw in a Britfield embroidered cap with the Britfield in it. As didn't tell them, it's in there. And
very cool.
So just how cool is that gonna be? She's gonna be excited and stuff. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned the crest, and I know we have to wrap this up, but I'm just having so much fun. You mentioned the crest. I'm sure a lot of time and thought went into that. Is that up in the top left there? You want to tell me about that?
That's our crest. We created it. It's trademarked. It's got 3 Latin quotes in there. And actually, one second, let me pull this up. I gotta remember. And this is kind of for branding, and this will be on everything that we do. So the Latin quotes is by skill and valor, by wisdom and courage, by faith and love.
I love it. That's so cool. And then obviously you got the lion on there.
Yes, and that's sort of the symbol of especially with England, of royalty, and then the horse, strength and stamina. And it's kind of cool. There's a great scene in book 1 where he's in Windsor Castle on the 3rd story, sneaking out his window because the door's been locked. I don't want to give too much away. And he's falling back, and he reaches out and he grabs this lion. Like the little part of the building. They do that with the stonework. Yeah. There's stone lions and
like the gargoyles and everything.
Yeah. And so he grabs it, but it's like I don't think a lot of people catch it, but it's like it's so symbolic. And then book 2 is Britfield and the Rise of the Lion, and so again we're playing with that theme. So
awesome. Well, Chad, this has been a true delight to have you on. I love it. I'm going to get the book. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it with my family. And if we're so lucky to have you back on again, I'd love to have you back on at some point in the future after I've read it and talk about it, and maybe when the movie's coming out. That'd be great.
That's what's fun. It's like once you've read it, and I don't expect you to have read it, but it's like once you read it, it's so much fun to dig in, because there's so much in it, and especially with book 1 with the rest of them, because there's a reason it starts up in Yorkshire, and it's a reason why there's a part in Weatherly Orphanage called The Factory, because it's going back to the 19th century industrial model. And so there's so much undercurrent, under layers. There's a reason why the next one is at Oxford, the epitome of academia. Next one's in Windsor. The royalty brings into question, what is royalty? What does it mean? And then London, the height of imperialism, banking, right? And then Canterbury, religion. So, it's like, it's got all these themes in it, and it's just so layered. And so you can read through it. It's fast, it's fun, it's exciting, but you could dig deep into it. So,
yeah. Well, I look forward to doing that. Thank you so much for coming on, spending an hour and a half with us. This has just been a blast, and we'll look forward to doing it again at some point in the future.
Perfect. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.